Hey girl gang, it's Dr. Joy here and you are watching Delivering Joy MDTV. Welcome to Well Woman Wednesday. So y'all, you know we've been talking about the social determinants of health, or how we live, where we work, our ability to get an education, and many other social factors actually play a big role in how healthy we can be. So today I have a very special guest, my dear friend Tabitha COVERSON. She's also my soror, y'all, and we are representing because it is boule time. So you can see I got my ivy leaf here. Yes. Shout out to all of our sorors who are attending boule, but we're still here working. So today we're going to talk specifically about our education and how that affects our ability to become and stay healthy. Make sure you keep watching. We are back and I'm so excited to introduce my guest for today, who actually happens to be my sorority sister and friend, Tabitha COVERSON. Tabitha is the Executive Director of Troup and Muskogee County Communities and Schools here, and she deals with these sorts of issues every single day. How the things that are happening in our education system actually snowball into effects of things like poverty, inability to hold down a job, even problems with the criminal justice system, and just overall quality of life. So she's going to be talking to us about that today. Welcome, Tabitha.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, good. Thank you for coming. Talk a little bit about what you do every day at Communities and Schools.
Okay. So what I do is, I'm kind of in the background, but I have site coordinators that are housed in several schools around the county, and they work with our most at-risk youth. And when we say at-risk, I really don't like that term, but students with challenges.
Yes.
And so we try to turn those challenges into opportunities for growth and for advancement for not only the students but the families. But our ultimate goal is to make sure those kids graduate on time. Mm-hmm. Every 26 seconds, a child either drops out or makes a decision to drop out of school, and that's they usually decide by middle school. By the time they're 12, they've already decided that they're going to drop out of school. Oh. So we try to intervene early. So I have all 3 middle schools here in Troup County and 2 middle schools in Muskogee County covered. And we provide services, anything that's a barrier to them, to their education, whether it's food insecurity, whether it's they need clothes, they need shoes, they need school supplies, they need a mentor, they need a tutor, they need a ride. A lot of times, and the parents as well, especially during the pandemic. The pandemic showed us that there are a lot of gaps in the community as far as services and resources, especially with mental health. Mm-hmm. And also with, just basic health needs. It's amazing how many kids don't go to the doctor and get regular checkups and things like that. And it's, a lot of times it's generational. Mom didn't do it, their mom never did it. We relied on, my grandmother said if I drink ginger ale and eat chicken soup, then I'm gonna be healthy. And so we're trying to get them out of those patterns of thinking.
Wow. That is, first of all, that's an amazing program, because we never understand how difficult it can be for kids to learn if they come to school hungry, or if they're not feeling well and they haven't even been able to get their regular health checkups. And then we're asking them to focus and pay attention all day, and to, not fidget and don't get in trouble and don't talk. So there's lots of things that kind of play into that, and people kind of tend to label kids.
Right.
Like, bad, they're bad.
Right. And we get that a lot. And so our focus is to eliminate what I call that background noise. Those things that are going on that would distract them from learning. Like, we as adults, go into work and we think about bills and we think about the stuff that's going on, and we fail to realize kids, they carry that too, and they bring it to school. Kids, the lights are off and our mom and dad were fighting and I had to go stay with grandma and those different things. And so when they come to school, somebody used an example yesterday. If I hit my toe on the corner of a desk or something, I'm not thinking about what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. I'm not going to think about what's happening later today or next week. I'm thinking about the pain or trauma of hitting my toe right now. And so a lot of kids and a lot of families are in that right now trauma And so there's no focus on anything else.
You can understand why kids might not necessarily be as engaged in school, and why some parents may not be as engaged at home as well, to kind of help kids pick up on the things that they need to learn in order to get on grade level, really learn at their full capacity.
And a lot of parents are intimidated. And when I say that, there are a lot of acronyms and a lot of labels and a lot of, diagnosis, and a lot of parents say, I don't want my kids labeled as, having a mental health disorder. I don't want my child labeled as having a IEP or a 504 plan or those things. And so, or they don't know how to have the conversations to get their children evaluated to have those things. It's either or sometimes. And so we have those conversations and work as a liaison for the parents to get students in front of, doctors, teachers, psychologists, whoever they need to see, so that they can get to that next level. It's not that little Johnny is not smart, but maybe little Johnny can't see because he needs glasses, but nobody ever evaluated, or he's not hearing well, but nobody ever evaluated that. And if everybody at home yells, of course little Johnny can hear just fine at home, but in a classroom where we're speaking in our normal inside voice as teachers,
right?
He's gonna struggle. And when you go home and nobody's reading to you or having you read to them, and it's not because, most of the time, it's not because the parents don't want that, it's just they don't know. And so we try to work with the parents so that they're more familiar and more comfortable asking the questions and reaching out for help. A lot of people just don't know that there's help available, so they'll go through life, and their children fall farther and farther behind, and then, graduation comes and they can't read, or they can't fill out a job application, and they have, no hope. And then here we go with criminal activity, or another generation in the system, receiving, welfare, food stamps. And I'm not saying, that's a stepping stone, to get to the next level for some people, but we don't want that to be the end of their journey.
Absolutely. What we see is generational poverty a lot of the times when this happens. And if you don't know how to read or write, and if you're a parent that may not have all the resources to be able to teach your child at home, or if you, are lacking in some of the basic necessities, school is not going to be on your, top 5 list. It might be, how am I going to eat today? Can I get the lights turned off? What kind of, do I have any clothes to put on my back? Is there running water at home? So the school gets pushed further and further down on that list when you are lacking just those basic resources. I went to a family connections conference, and there was this whole lecture on what happens when students are not reading on grade level by 3rd grade, and it was particularly the 3rd grade. And I was absolutely blown away by the snowball effect that can cause. You guys just wouldn't believe how much that reading level by 3rd grade, how important that is, how much that contributes to how that student's going to go through the rest of their academic career, but also how they're going to live. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So 3rd grade reading determines a lot, even beyond school. And I've been told, and I'm just going to repeat what I've been told by other educators, but when they figure out, each grade level that comes through, the number of kids or the percentage of kids that aren't reading on 3rd grade level determines how many prisons, how much space they have in the prisons each year. So they look at, this cohort of students that comes through the 3rd grade. If 50% aren't reading on grade level, then fast forward, they say, in X number of years, we're going to need this many more spaces in our jails and our prisons, because these students will more than likely end up in the criminal justice system. And
that's crazy, Tab. No,
it's like the prison pipeline.
Yeah. And I was reading that and I thought, what a horrible attitude to take.
It is.
Why not say, instead of building 50 more prisons, I'm going to take this money and these resources and invest in these kids to bring them up to speed so that they can That's crazy to me. Oh my gosh.
And so, third grade reading level, and then you start getting in more advanced fourth and fifth grade in middle school, and they fall farther and farther behind. And so by the time they turn 16, and oftentimes before 16, you start seeing a lot of truancy, and then finally at age 16, they disappear. It's like, I'm not coming back to school, I'm done. And it's not just because they can't read, but then their peers realize that, they're not on the same level. And then you have bullying and you have those issues. So, trying to get kids to read on grade level by third grade is extremely important. But if you go a little bit further, even the kids that are on grade level, because of issues and trauma and things, 24% of those students are still going to have issues by the time they get to middle school, even if they can read. So
wow,
it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about how some kids actually, they can actually project how many people in a community are going to be job insecure, food insecure, housing insecure,
right,
based on this third grade reading level. So they take that third grade reading level percentage and extrapolate it into all kind of things. And that's why I think it's so important that we have our kids reading to us, or we're reading to them, we're talking to them like real adult sentences, and we're helping them develop their language skills, because language is the first part of learning how to read, and then reading comprehension is important for everything. Like, think about how many things you do in daily life where you have to be able to read something, understand it, and then take action on it. So for our folks that have trouble reading, it's really important that we give them adequate help early,
right,
for sure. Always interested when I have guests about their personal experiences and what really makes it worth it for you to do the work that you're doing. Like, do you have like a particular memory or story that you, and I know you can't share names of students, but of something that you saw or were able to do that just kind of made this whole journey worth it?
So, two things. It was twofold. When I was in high school, I was a tutor for communities and schools. I tutored a student in high school, and he was adamant about, he didn't care. He was just waiting on his 16th birthday, and he was going to drop out of school. I was in college then. And then I worked at the alternative school. Communities and schools had a program, so I worked there while I was in college as well. And there was this young lady at the alternative school. She was horrible. I mean, she was horrible. She was mad at the world. Every other word, we were like, you're at school, you can't curse every other word. And, anything would trigger her. She wanted to fight. It was like, fight. That was her response to everything. And it just came from the environment that she was, in, and also some of the things that had transpired in her life. And her first instinct was to fight. And so, eventually she got some assistance with her anger issues, because she was mad about some stuff that had nothing to do with anybody at school. But that was the easiest outlet for her. So a few years later, I saw her, and she was like, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "Yes." I was like, "What are you up to?" And she said, "I just finished nursing school."
Wow.
And I was like, "Are you serious?" She was like, "Yeah." She said, "I finished nursing school." And I was like, "You remember me?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Because I remember you telling me that I could do or be anything I wanted to if I just changed my mindset and my attitude." She said, "I always remember that." She said, "Now I struggled a bit, before I finished high school, but she said, I remember that." And she said, "I took some time off, and I had a child." She said, "But I focused on my goal." And I was like, wow.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
I remember her. My mom was an ED here as well. The position I have now, she had 20 plus years ago.
Oh wow, that's like a full circle move.
And
Yeah.
so I worked for the state remote rehab for 8.5 years, and this position came open, and like CIS was about to be non-existent in Troup County. And I was like, oh wow. I was like, I can't let that happen, because I know what it used to look like. I know the benefit of the program. I know how many kids it helps. So I had just gotten a new job with DBHDD, Department of Behavioral Health. And I got a new office. I'm on the 24th floor in Atlanta.
Oh, yes.
And this job came open and I said, I'm going to apply for it. And they was like, are you sure?
Like, why do you want to do that?
Yeah. It's like, you're going to come back to LaGrange and you want to do this, nonprofit. And I was like, yeah. I said, I had to pray about it. And it was one of those things. And God was like, yeah, this is what I want you to do. And so, literally, I applied for the job. I interviewed. They told me, no, you didn't get the job. I was like, I'm not worried about that. I was like, God always told me this is my job, so I'm going to wait. They called me back. Can you interview again? Came back. I got the job. So, at first, it was really difficult, trying to rebuild bridges and get those resources and connections made. And then, I literally was about to quit. I had actually gotten a job at University of West Georgia. It's like, I'm leaving, I'm not doing this. And then there was a young lady at Gardner Newman, and she was failing all of her classes. And I mean, every last one of them. And we were like, what can we do for you that will, if you could just bring your grades up 5 points? Maybe a high F, if there's a such thing, or a low C, just something. And she said, I want Sharpie markers. I was like, what do you mean Sharpie? Like pens? She was like, yeah. She said, I'll bring them up if I can get, some Sharpie markers. She said, I want the bright colors. I said, okay, well, 5 points, you do better. Next semester, this little girl had A's, B's, and I think she had 2 C's, the lower grades. And
look at that turnaround, that's huge.
Yeah, and so I go to Walmart and I'm buying Sharpie markers. I was like, bump the budget. I'm just gonna pay for this out of my pocket. I had the ones with the glitter and all sorts of colors, and I brought them to her and I said, why haven't you been doing this before? She said, nobody ever asked me to. She said, nobody ever asked why she was failing. Nobody ever encouraged her. Nobody ever said, I know you can do better. She said, nobody ever asked. So she said, why should I?
Oh, wow.
So it's not a lot. I mean, a lot of kids are just, they have the potential, but there's no one pushing them to maximize their potential.
Yeah.
And so that's what, communities and schools is exactly that. We try to bring the community into the school, into the lives of these kids to be a sounding board, to encourage, to, it's not about, a lot of people say CIS, they give you stuff. But we give you more than just stuff. We give you the stuff in here and in here to
be successful. Wow. And that's so huge, because I meet people every day who I can tell no one has ever, encouraged them to do or be more, or no one has ever held them accountable to do more, or maybe they have so many past traumas and issues that they're not really whole in terms of their heart and their mental health and how they view themselves. And when you can help just tweak that just a little bit, you're surprised at what these people go out and do. I mean, it's amazing. A little bit of encouragement, opportunity, and hope can do for somebody. Hope is a very serious thing.
It is.
When people have lost it, hopelessness is very serious. Matter of fact, hopelessness is the thing that leads to people dying by suicide. Almost always. Is that they don't have hope that the future can be better. Health and education go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Like, if we don't have good health, we are not going to be able to get an education, and if we don't have a good education, it's going to be hard to access good health.
Right.
So the two are interchangeable, and we often don't think about that, but it is really a big deal. One of the things I run into, and I'm sure you probably do too, is just helping people just understand the basic things.
Right.
Like, I do need a checkup at least once a year, Talk a little bit about how you at communities and schools connect health with ability to access a quality education.
A lot of times, because we see kids come to school in poor health, we see kids come to school, with that excruciating toothache or, just a cold, like a really bad, sinus infections and those things. And so we communicate not only with the student, but the parents that, we ask the tough questions because we're not employed by the school system, so we can say we have a little bit more leeway than.
Oh, okay, I love it.
My staff will go out and do home visits, and during the pandemic, we call them porch visits. Like we, stand outside. We have those conversations. Like, when was the last time, you took your student to the doctor? When was their last checkup? And a lot of times the parents are, well, I have a job, but I can't, if I take the benefits of my job, I can't afford that. But I make too much money to qualify for, certain, like Peach State or whatever that is. So they go through and say, we'll just do the best we can without those checkups.
Right, don't go outside, because if you fall, we ain't got no insurance.
Right.
So
that type stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and at that point, we connect parents with resources. Like, there are other alternatives. There are other avenues to access, healthcare. Mobile units. When they come, we provide that information to our parents. A lot of times, I tell the parents, when you make your child an appointment, I need you to make one for yourself too, because you haven't been to the doctor, you haven't been taking your child to the doctor. There's a fear there, and we see that a lot. A lot of parents, a lot of kids are afraid to go.
I see that all the time. People come in and say, I haven't been in 5, 8, 10, 15 years because I just don't want to hear any bad news.
Right. It's not, 1920. Bad news does not have to be bad news.
Or the end of the world, right? And I talk to people about that all the time. I'm like, how you get bad news? You don't do prevention.
Right.
So you want to do your preventative visits so that you don't have to hear bad news, because you're on top of things. And if there is something going on, you can get to work on fixing it versus letting it go for 10, 15 years. And then you come and then you're in the worst shape ever. And that's a big problem.
My site coordinators arranged like a women's health forum where the people from the West Georgia Cancer Coalition came in and talked about, HPV and those things. And we had several tables set up where the young ladies could go around and learn about the things that they need to be taken care of as a young lady, and the information they could take home to share with their parents. Because a lot of kids was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know I needed to do this. I didn't know this was available. And that didn't know is because nobody at home knew either to talk to you. So here, here are some things you can go home, have this conversation, with your mom. Have this conversation with an adult, because we have a lot of kids who are being raised by grandparents. We have a lot of young ladies who are being raised by their dads, and some dads don't want to talk about, certain things with their daughters.
Right.
And so, we provide those resources. We do webinars, we do, and invite people in and have the families log in, where Zoom has become a wonderful thing because we get so much participation. People can ask questions, in the chat without feeling embarrassed and those things. So we get a lot of participation, and then on the backside, parents will email us individually like, I would like to get more information about, or can you connect me with someone who can help us with this? So I think it's a matter of wanting to know and wanting to do better. It's just making it available for the parents, because I always say available does not mean accessible. So it's really important that not only is it available, but they have to have access. And I think that's one of the issues, especially for our rural located students. Once they get home, there's no transportation to get, from in between LaGrange and Hogansville to a physician if you don't have a car.
Definitely down to do some of these webinar things, because I think, I would love to. I like teenagers anyway, and I like parents. I remember when I was in med school and I was poor, I was working for Fulton County with this program called Conversations with Our Daughters. And so that was my thing. Every week I would have a group of moms and daughters, and they would come, to the YMCA, and the county would sponsor dinner for them, and we would sit down and talk about all these topics.
Wow.
Because a lot of times, if parents don't have enough education to be able to help their child navigate, you got to educate not only the children but the parents too. Because the parents are they're kind of controlling what the kid has access to. So I think that's very, very valuable to be able to have time and have people talk to each other and ask questions and get the right information.
Right. That's the other thing.
Yes, the right information. Because you'd be surprised. I have mother-daughters come in all the time to establish their first GYN visit, and the mom has told the daughter things that she was taught as she was growing up, things that were passed down from grandma and auntie and all these people. And that's not that those things are not valuable, because someone's lived experience is a valuable thing. But sometimes we don't have the most accurate information. Yeah, particularly when it comes to our bodies, when it comes to birth control is probably the hugest one that I see where people just absolutely have no idea. Or abnormal bleeding or heavy periods. We get, all kinds of off the wall questions about that stuff. And so education is so key, especially when it comes to your health. And your health is so key when it comes to your education. If you don't feel well and you're at school, you're not really at your maximum capacity for, gaining knowledge and learning and being able to do the things you need to do. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation today, because I really hope that people get that our health is based on what we know. And, sometimes what we know or what we can learn is based on our health. So the two are interchangeable. And so these social determinants of health, where we live, where we work, where we play, what we eat, how we're connected within our communities, these are big deals. And oftentimes when I see people who have chronic health conditions, one of these things has failed. One of these determinants has failed. They're living in a bad environment. They're working in a really stressful environment, or environment that doesn't offer them a living wage where they can afford to have the basic necessities of life. Or, they're not connected socially. They may have mental health issues, and, maybe they don't have a support network. So these are all big things that affect us so much. Tabitha, what would you say to families who maybe just need a little bit of guidance to try to get their child on point in terms of reading on grade level or participating in classes on their grade level? If they have kids who maybe are thinking about dropping out, how do you approach these families, and what is your advice to them?
Talk to your kids, first of all. That's the first thing. Simple stuff like, how was your day? What did you do at school? What did you learn today? Secondly, there are some parents, because I know for me, I'm not that sit down and help you with your homework type person, because I was one that, I never took notes in school, but I made straight A's. So I don't know how to study. I don't know how to teach you how to study. And so there are parents who are in the same boat, maybe for different reasons. It's okay to ask for help. Your child needs a tutor, that's fine, but I always suggest maybe you sit there with them and the tutor and you learn how to work with your student. Parents who didn't graduate from high school, maybe, you want to finish your high school diploma. You and your child, y'all can go to school together. You may do it online, sit down, have homework time or something, but you just need to carve out that time with your child. And I know people work crazy schedules. I could never do rotating shifts or night shifts or those things, but there are so many people in the community and in the schools that are just waiting for somebody to say, hey, do you want to volunteer to help? We do an AmeriCorps program where somebody comes in, and that's the whole focus of our AmeriCorps people, is to help those kids get on reading on grade level.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a matter of not being afraid to ask for help, but at the same time, you got to take some ownership too. It's not just push your kids out there and hopefully somebody else will fix the problem. You have to take some ownership and have some accountability as well. So they kind of go hand in hand, but the main thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. And don't be afraid to say, my child is struggling. And don't just send them to school and let them continue to struggle. A lot of times the best advocate your child has is you as a parent. So don't be afraid to advocate and push and ask those questions and show up. Be that parent that just pops up at school and, can I sit in the classroom with my child? Those things. Or can I, sign a waiver and send, my sister because she works a different schedule. But get as many people surrounding and supporting those kids as possible, even if it's not a family member. Like I said, we have a whole arsenal of, resources and volunteers who are willing to help, but, we don't know until you ask the question. So I say, make sure you ask for help and get involved with your child. I mean, you don't have to know everything, but your presence makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that you said, especially being involved and engaged, taking ownership, because when you're a parent, and this is something I talk to my young ladies about who are having their first babies, but when you're a parent, you are becoming responsible for somebody's life, for leading someone's life, and cultivating the best out of your children. And it can be a daunting task. It's overwhelming, right? But, doing as much as you can to connect with that child, to connect with that school, and seeing what resources are there. Don't be too prideful,
Right.
Because not only is this going to affect your child's trajectory, how far they can go, but it also may affect the way that they live. So if you know that things were maybe difficult for you, you didn't have that support, you didn't have parents that were very involved in your upbringing or, in your school career, then take ownership and be that parent and say, hey, I may not have all the answers, I may not know how to do your algebra homework, but we're going to go and talk to people at school and find out what resources are available to us so that we can get you the help that you need. Good education, I think, is a foundation for health. Even understanding what's wrong with me or how I feel, or being able to articulate or say to the doctor, oh, my shoulder, there's so many things that go into not even being able to verbalize what's wrong. Like, I see people all the time that say, I don't feel good. And I'll say, can you describe what? And they don't have the vocabulary to even say, well, actually, I think, it's in my left lower pelvis, or, something's just wrong. I know something's wrong. And sometimes we do feel that way. We know something's off with us and we're not sure what we could attribute it to, but just having language. So grateful that you were able to do this with me today. Shout out again to our sorors at Boulay. We're thinking about you and excited for this year's Boulay celebration. Get in touch if you need some help, or if you can offer some help. If you want to volunteer, want to be involved, want to do a webinar on something, make sure that you, as the community, are being active in our schools. Thank you so much for watching, Girl Gang. We'll catch you next week. Peace.